Welcome back to Sledgehammer Horror, guys. I am Ken Sledge, and let's talk horror. Now, today I'm joined by somebody that, as a child, influenced me in so many ways, and now as an adult, I look up to for the fun conversations we've just had, and what I've got to know of him, the amazing Brandon Crane. How you doing today, man?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Dude, I am so good. This is
Thank
so
you very
exciting
much
for
for
me
having me.
because, oh, dude, anytime. And anybody that knew me growing up knows what the It miniseries meant to me. For those of you that don't know, he did play young Ben in the TV miniseries of It. Also, the Wonder Years, which is something that growing up I was a huge fan of as well.
Yeah, no, that was a good that was a really good experience too. Being on that show. I mean, that was one of the top shows at the time, still pretty wholesome, and something that's relatable to every kid growing up, especially, my age, because it was just exactly 20 years to the day. Super cool experience, and a lot like It, because it's something that resonates with people and resonated with the audience at the time.
Oh yeah, man. And still, like you said, to this day, they just are doing a reboot of the Wonder Years now. So,
Yeah.
I mean, that shows how important that show truly was, that a TV show is getting a reboot to run today.
Yeah.
And this just kind of shows that the things that you were touching were kind of turned into gold, because they got the reboot of the Wonder Years. They got the reboot of It, the cinema version. And fun fact, you had an amazing cameo in It Chapter 2. It's something that I think is just brilliant. We're looking for Ben Hanscom, and there you are. There's Ben right there. Not in this world's Ben, but in the world Ben. There you are, man. What was it like when you were approached? Did they approach you, or did you approach them to have this part in this film?
I think it was kind of mutual. When the trailer dropped, the one that broke the internet for the first It, it did, man. That was just a quick forward. Warner Brothers has been threatening to do a remake of It for 15 years, feature length, version. So many times it had come and gone, and then just nothing happened. Right.
Yeah.
So when we found out they were doing another one, we just thought, well, it's just not going to happen. Then like Fukunaga dropped out before Andy Muschietti came in. There you go. This is a curse. Like, if you just shouldn't mess with it, right? It is what it is. Don't mess with it. If it's not broken, don't fix it. But they did it. And so when they announced, or when the trailer for this thing dropped, and we'd all been sitting on pins and needles for a year. Like, we've been watching them, leak, BTS pictures and all that stuff. So anyway, when it reached out, or when the trailer dropped, I reached out to Andy on Facebook, and I just said, hey, I saw the trailer. It completely blew my mind. For whatever it's worth, I can't wait to see what you've done with this thing. And I signed it like, Ben, class of 90, right? He's a big deal. I didn't expect him to respond, and he did, like, almost immediately. And so we struck up a dialogue, and I'd say friendship. And so by the time the movie came out, the night that it opened, I came home and I texted him right away, but this time on Instagram. Oh no, it was Facebook. Yeah, it was Facebook again. And I just told him, dude, this was amazing. I mean, I was nervous for everybody when it began, but I was entertained the entire time. I loved what they did with that first part. So I came home. I was excited. I reached out on Facebook and I was like, hey, that was amazing. Congratulations. And he said, yeah, thanks. You should do a cameo in Chapter 2. And I was like, what? That doesn't make any sense. Like, this is not the way the world worked, at least not when I was at it. There was none of this getting cast over Instagram, right? Or Facebook. So, but I noticed he wasn't verified, right? And so I thought, wow, I think I must be getting trolled. I must be getting trolled. After all this time, maybe I haven't been talking to Andy at all. It was really humiliating almost. So I flipped over to Instagram where he was verified. And I said, okay, this is at the risk of embarrassment. Am I getting trolled over here?
Yeah.
And, his response was, ha, 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 ha. And I was like, oh, God,
Yeah.
terrible. And he said, I'm the troll. I said, okay, this is amazing. Thank God. Okay. So yeah, let's talk about a cameo. And I said, after what I saw tonight, I would just show up to work in a chicken suit if you asked me to. Like, there's a touch of genius with that guy. He's an amazing storyteller and an incredible artist. So
Yeah.
I mean, he's the real deal, this guy, right? Of course, I'd love to come and be a part of it in any capacity. I'd lay feeder cable if he asked me to. Like, it doesn't matter. So that's sort of how that came to be, and it was locked in, and it would be a year, I think, from that moment until I got to step on set in Toronto. That was amazing to come back after like 10 years or more, back to doing something that I really loved and work on a title that I have a connection with, a history with, that I love very much. So it was, the honor was all mine. It was a great day.
It's such a wonderful Easter egg, because it's one of those things where it's like, it's not punching you in the face with it,
right?
But it's right in your face. Like, here he is. Here's Brandon.
Yeah.
It's funny because we're cutting to, is this Ben? Right. And we see you and we're like, oh shit, right. It is Ben, right? But it's not. And I think the brilliance of that, that shows Andy. Andy seems like he's more of a fan than just a director. It seems like he was such a fan of the franchise.
He's definitely a fan. I mean, we talked a couple nights before we shot. I mean, we met up for dinner just to talk and catch up and talk about it. And he said that right at the outset, on the outset. He said that he'd been a fan since he was a kid. So it's kind of a dream come true for him to visit this project and be able to tell it his own way. Amazing. And that was a great night, great dinner, great conversation.
I'm so glad you could be a part of that, man. Because that's,
me too.
Like I said, you're already part of a movie that has influenced so many of my peers and so many people to this day. You still have people that have the phobia of clowns. And that's because of you assholes that did that.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's our fault. No, I agree. I think we've ruined clowns. Too bad we couldn't ruin McDonald's for everybody, because that's the most prolific killer clown, I think. David Howard Thornton be damned. I honestly, I think Ronald McDonald is the most evil clown bastard there ever was. Right. But yeah, it was great to work with Andy, and he's been really interesting to watch. You go back and you see his storytelling with Mama. I mean, just watching this guy work is great. He knows what he wants, but he also fosters a very creative sort of environment. I mean, the scene as it was written for the cameo was longer, a little bit longer, where there was a lot of room for isms to really kind of sell that this could be Jeremy Ray Taylor as an adult, with the stammering, the doe eyes, the tripping over himself, while he's trying to impress all of these architects. But that was like, Paul Thomas Anderson length. So they had to really cut some things. Either that or I totally sucked. I'm not sure which. I think they had to cut the shit and just go for it. But I'm glad I still made it in. I think it was a nice reveal. And yeah, I would do that again. I cannot wait to see what he does with Flash.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably, I think he's going to be the new DC guy. I
would be totally fine with that, because you look at the cinematography of chapters 1 and 2. The guy has an eye for film, and his sister as well. You watch the behind the scenes stuff, and they know what they're doing.
They are both artists of incredible integrity. And I'm thankful every day that they let me into that universe. Yeah, it's great.
And it really is great to watch you on there, man. And while we're talking about the past, I do want to go back to the past now, because you've started horror for a lot of people. You are part of the reason horror has came into the lives of so many of my friends, my family. But I need to know how this started for you, man. I want to know about your first horror movie. So I got to ask you, Brandon, your first horror movie was?
It was the Amelia episode in Trilogy of Terror. I was flipping through the channels when I was a little kid. Man, I was probably 7 or 8 years old, and I remember that being on late at night, and I watched that, and it scared the shit out of me when I was a little kid. I mean, I was a little kid.
Mhm.
I never looked at dolls or toys or anything like that the same. Like for years, I would sort of endow personalities on inanimate objects because of
Yeah.
that shit. There were times that I slept with a bat under my pillows just because I never knew if like maybe my Teddy Ruxpin was going to flip out and try and eat me while I slept, right? You know what I mean? So
Oh yeah.
it scarred me. If you think about it, it scarred me for a really long time. I wouldn't come back to horror until my early teens, really, when I was old enough
Well,
to start having
that
like
was the one.
sleepovers with
If I
friends.
remember correctly, you're talking about with Trilogy of Terror. It was the doll that had the sharp teeth. That it.
Yeah. It was the Zuni. It was like the Zuni doll
Yeah.
that's like chasing her around, and the soundtrack is frightening. I mean, it sounds ridiculous and camp now when you go back and look at it, but when it's on TV in black and white, that the suspension of disbelief becomes more believable.
Yeah.
Because you can't really see all of the cheesy effects and all that stuff, and all you hear is this thing. And you're thinking,
Yeah.
oh my god,
Razor sharp teeth and
it was
spike it has.
yeah, the Zuni doll that wouldn't die. So that freaked me out forever, and I wouldn't really see any horror because of that. But until I was like my early teens, we once we got our like 2020 video membership or Blockbuster or whatever, we'd go. My friends and I, we'd get things. I mean, everything from Faces of Death to to actual horror movies. But the one that I think struck a chord with me the most and was kind of like my comfort space in the horror genre, I'd have to say was Evil Dead. Props to your hat. Because it was camp enough to be sort of light entertainment. It wasn't like this cloud of, oh my God, there was no like looming foreboding over the whole thing. I mean, it was literally, you go outside, you're going to get attacked. You should know this, right? To me, it was like the beginning of the white people shit era, if I may. You know what I mean? Like, don't go outside. If you know he's out there, don't go outside. You hear a noise somewhere and you're in the middle of the woods, don't go outside. Never go outside. But they do.
Right.
In that movie, especially, just the carnage in that movie was terrifying and hilarious at the same time.
I'm a huge Evil Dead fan. Obviously, like I said, I got the hat. It's something that totally has influenced my life. My wife and I are about 60% done with an Evil Dead 2 fan film that we're making that takes place 40 years after the events of Evil Dead 2. Okay. Had Ash never come back from the end where he gets sucked in the vortex, right? What happens 40 years after that when they've never found the killer of the Nobies, and what happened to Professor Nobi? Because if you remember in the films, you never see Professor Nobi. You don't know what happened.
No, you're right.
We're going to explore a lot of that, but I want to talk about Evil Dead with you for a minute. Since I know Trilogy of Terror is kind of your first glance, but Evil Dead sounds like it was the first film you actually watched all the way through and digested as a horror film.
And digested and rewatched because, like I said, it was light enough entertainment, honestly, that to watch these people unravel. That's the thing that I love about that movie the most, is especially Bruce Campbell, to watch these people unravel. You have these archetypes. You've got these people who are like the typical protagonists in these movies. Yes, of course, but to watch them change, I think it was the first time in a horror movie that I can remember, especially at that time, where you can see these people starting to come unglued. But at the same time, I also think that it made horror more accessible, because it wasn't just blood and guts and gore. I mean, there's plenty of that, but there was also, humor in the unraveling of the people. There was some pretty damn good camera work, considering the budget. I mean, there's so much to appreciate about that movie.
Oh yeah.
And then as it went along, there's Evil Dead 2, but then when Army of Darkness came out, love it or hate it, Army of Darkness was probably one of the first movie purchases I ever made, that I still own, because that's the one that made horror mainstream, as far as I'm concerned. It really did. It wasn't just genre specific. Like you didn't have to be a horror nut to go and see it and enjoy it.
I still quote Army of Darkness to this day.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no. I love that movie. I think I even have it on. I think I even have it on Laserdisc if I want to date myself, like somewhere. I'm sure I do.
I just recently got the Blu-ray boomstick edition with all the deleted scenes, the alternate endings. And,
I'd love to see that.
Oh, yeah, dude, it's so awesome. There's one. Spoiler alert, but the movie's old enough now where I can give a spoiler. There's an alternate ending where he sleeps through everything. And he wakes up and it's like the world is coming to an end. He's got this huge beard on him, and it's hilarious because he didn't say the words right again.
I mean, yeah.
So with the first Evil Dead, which scene would you say it was that affected you the most?
I think it's the one where I think it's, I'm trying to remember like specifics, like exactly what happens when he has to kill her.
Mm-hmm.
If I remember this correctly, that's part of the unraveling. It's magic. That's what it is for me. When they start turning on themselves, that's what does it for me.
When she takes
like
that
a character standpoint,
when she's laying there and you think she's done, and then she takes that pencil and stabs the other girl in the ankle, and then it starts to spider web through her ankle. Like that's another one. Like you're talking about the unraveling. Like you're horrified at this point now.
Yeah, but you're also entertained. Honestly, I love that movie for so many reasons. I had my daughter. She's 15 now. I took her to a horror convention in like 2008, and we didn't know that there was even a thing. Like we didn't know these things existed. Got an invite and it was the coolest thing ever.
Yeah.
So I've got her kind of getting into the genre too. And I think the first horror movie I showed her was Evil Dead a couple years ago, just so she could get into it, and she's totally into it. She was laughing and she was like, "Oh, is there another one? Are there 13 of these too?" I'm like, well, no, just there's a handful, but we can move on. But there's all these things on her list. Like during the Halloween thing, we were watching all kinds of crap, and I'm kind of proud of her inside,
Yeah. Well, like I said, it can't be understated, and I know that you probably hear this a lot, but the effect that the It miniseries still has to this day. Horror is what I do for a living, man. This is something that I'm so happy and I'm so proud, and I hear it all the time, and I'm always so giddy to talk about it because it's for me, it's like the miniseries House from 1986.
Nice.
Nightmare on Elm Street, Poltergeist 3, which is weird to say 3, I know, but these are all the movies that really shaped me as a young boy. These are the ones that I watched the most, the ones that meant the most to me. Like I said, me and my cousins, Josh, Al, Nick, Mike, we were the lucky seven in our neighborhood, man. If we weren't playing Nintendo or playing baseball out on our own little sandlot, it was horror movies, man. That's what we were doing. And it is one that terrified us. I still have the VHS to this day. I mean, it's something that I truly adore the film. I haven't upgraded the DVD just for the sheer fact that I got to adjust the tracking. I love the graininess. I love that. It and Alien are the two that I'm still very proud owner of on VHS because the grittiness fits those movies so well.
That's amazing. There was, where was I? I was in Indianapolis a couple years ago, and somebody had a Betamax tape from the original air date that they still have.
That is so dope, man.
Yeah, they're like, my dad's gone now, but I made sure to grab a couple of these, videos because he'd recorded it. And I just thought that's amazing. I mean, we're looking at a 31-year-old tape. Like, I would have recorded over that in a heartbeat. I mean, this is the thing about it for me too. And I know it's like that for the rest of the losers. We never dreamed, like in our wildest dreams, that people would care.
Right.
Honestly, TV movies back then, especially with full-length features coming out, like Misery had just hit. I mean, there were all these like real legitimate big budget movies. And for us to have done television, dude, unless it was like Boy in the Plastic Bubble, it probably wasn't going to make it to VHS, let alone get repeats.
Right.
So the fact that this is carried on this long, completely beyond our wildest imagination.
But it also shows the charm of the kids, because the thing I hear all the time, this is not a slam towards anybody, because that's not who I am. That's not my integrity. If you're making art, I'm happy and I love it.
But let it fly.
But what I often hear is the kid part of the It miniseries is the best in the whole franchise. And I hear that. And this is not lip service because you're here. I'll show you episodes where this has been said many a times.
It's awesome.
But it's the charm of you kids. It's so genuine. Like when you watch that, you don't feel like you're watching actors. You feel like you're watching a bunch of friends that are holding a video camera doing, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, that's what it feels like when you're watching that. Like you can feel a genuine love between you guys. And when you're holding hands and Bill, God rest his soul, is like, help me, please help me. And then all of you go and you do that hug. Like it feels real, Jonathan Brandis, but that feels so real when you guys are all doing that.
I think we had amazing chemistry. I really do. Like we were great friends. And now because of conventions and the documentary and all that stuff, we've all been able to reconnect. And it's been amazing, honestly. Mm-hmm. When I saw Marlon at that first horror convention a couple years ago in Atlanta, I saw him in the lobby of the hotel, and it was like we just left the set yesterday.
Right.
Like time was in a vacuum. We picked up right where we left off, and then, as other shows would come up, we'd like add a few more. We'd get Ben in, we get Adam, finally Emily a couple years ago, even Jared. It's great that bond still exists, and it's like 30 years hadn't happened. We were kind of put in a sandbox together. Mm-hmm. But how the losers have this journey that they have to go on. We were on that journey anyway. Like we were tasked with holding together this first part of a movie. So we have these two simultaneous, journeys, happening at the same time. And it was magical. I think it was done because our friendship was real.
Well, it's a coming of age thing, like a lot of us that were watching this were the same age, so we're watching these people that we can relate to doing the things that we do, building dams in our creeks, going to the movies with each other, all these things that fighting killer clowns, all these things that normal kids do throughout the week,
kids. Yeah, 100%. 100%.
Yeah. So I want to bounce back to Evil Dead here for a second, my friend.
Yeah.
We talked about which scene affected you the most in Evil Dead. And it's one of those movies that is so hard to nail something down. But what would you say your favorite scene from the original Evil Dead would be?
My favorite scene. I don't really know if I have a favorite scene. I think the thing that left me with the most questions was the end.
Yeah.
That shot, especially that shot where, it's like they invented drones for the first time, when they pan off of, or they pull off of him, and he's just standing there like, what the fuck just happened? How do I get out of there? I don't know if I have a favorite scene. Maybe the tree thing with the vines and all that stuff. That was the thing, right? If I remember
Yeah.
correctly, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I enjoyed that. I just thought that was very well done.
Mhm.
I remember that sort of leaving an impression on me, very young.
Yeah.
But I mean, as far as like
At a young age, you don't really
favorite
understand the
scene,
severity of what's happened there either. You just see a tree
no,
hurting somebody, you know.
no, yeah. But I mean, I think that the whole package, there wasn't any like one particular standout thing. There was something that the catalyst that made me want to watch it over and over again was to sort of predict where the story would go if there was going to be another story,
Right.
because of that sort of strange ending.
Well, and that actually, you're kind of tying into my next question, actually. Since Evil Dead is part of a franchise, obviously,
right.
What would you say your favorite film in the Evil Dead franchise would be?
The one I've watched the most was Army of Darkness. I know for some people it does not count.
Oh, fuck yeah, it counts. That's totally an Evil Dead movie.
I know it does, but there are some people out there that are like, wow, that's just Hollywood pandering, bullshit. But honestly, that's the one I've watched the most, just because Bruce Campbell's freaking legend. He's a god in human skin.
He's so good, man.
He's so good. I mean, underrated.
Yeah.
Like the fact that dude hasn't, not that he hasn't done anything. I mean, the guy's a living legend, and he works more than most people. But the acclaim is where I say there's no justice in this business. There really isn't any justice in this business, because someone like that, I think, should be a real household name, not just with fans of this genre. I mean, but I mean, household name. The guy is one of the most talented actors we've ever been lucky enough to watch.
I mean, most people's favorites, including mine, would be Evil Dead 2. And you could make an argument that a whole lot of Evil Dead 2 is a one-man show of Bruce Campbell, and he's carrying the whole thing on his own. I mean, he's like you said, he's a genius, and he is. The physical work that he does is brilliant. So we know where horror really started for you with Trilogy of Terror, and then it kind of morphed its way into the Evil Dead. So we know where the start was, but now I want to throw you a little bit of a curveball here, man. And my little buddy Ghostface has a question for you.
Ghostface.
What's your favorite scary movie, Brandon? What is your favorite horror movie of all time?
I'm gonna have to say Poltergeist.
Legit.
And it's kind of a departure because we're going back to Steven Spielberg Hollywood, but there's so much of that movie that stuck with me too. Like, for example, we just bought a house, right? New construction, no backyard, right? It's a dirt farm.
Yeah.
Where this development was a we're in like Central California. That's where we are now. We're fairly close to Yosemite. Native Americans lived here for 10,000 years. And this particular piece of land has been untouched for a very long time. Attached to a farm. Like, my first instinct was, oh my God, I really want a pool. It's hot in Central California, right? And part of me was like, I don't know if we want to dig a pool, because I love this house so much. It's going to be my luck, especially with Poltergeist as an influence, that we're going to break ground on this bitch, and there's going to be, a bunch of skeletons in there. I just
skeletons in the pool, man.
It's totally irrational fear. And then we're going to get it poured, and it's going to storm one night, and then for some inexplicable reason, these skeletons are going to come crawling out of my pool. Like, totally irrational fears, but it's because it stuck with me. And the other reason, I have a lot of respect for the Poltergeist movie, because one of my peers at the time, as grown up, was Heather O'Rourke. We had the same agent, and she passed away way too young.
Didn't even start living yet, man.
No, not even. And it was before I could even grasp mortality, let alone my own, right? I mean, I wouldn't even visit my own mortality until Jonathan passed away.
Yeah.
So because it hit home for the first time, like, holy shit, somebody my age. That's crazy. But yeah, so Poltergeist, I think, is the one.
Let's take a shot at this real quick.
Go ahead.
Poltergeist was before the PG-13 rating. Poltergeist is a PG movie, and it's so damn scary to this day.
I
That
agree.
movie scares. I mean, look at the scene where the dude is pulling the skin off of his face
Yeah.
in front of the sink. You know, like what I love about this is Poltergeist, Tourist Trap, Jaws. These are all
Tourist
movies
Trap.
I've seen on network cable at like 2 p.m. on a Saturday when I was a kid.
Right.
And they're terrifying, but they had a PG rating, so they could throw them on.
Yeah, it's amazing. You think of like Raiders of the Lost Ark. Just watch that a couple days ago. You know, you've got all these people that are looking at the light they're not supposed to, and their freaking faces are melting off. Like, say what? There's no way that was a PG-13. That was PG all the way. It's maybe it's just different sensibilities now. I don't know what it is, but I think as adults, as humans, we're maybe better off for it because we weren't as sheltered. How's that?
Perfect. No, I agree with you. Now, Brandon, man, I've had such a great time with you, and this has meant so much to me, but I always end these with the same question, my friend. We're going to bounce back to Evil Dead. And what we're going to do now is we're going to rank this on a skull count. Now, what we're doing, we're ranking 0 skulls being the worst and 5 being the best. We're not being critics. We're not judging it on acting, score, cinematography, nothing like that. What we're doing now, man, is we're just ranking this movie on how much it affected you on first watch. So 0 being the worst and 5 being the best. What would your ranking of Evil Dead be?
Unequivocally, 5 skulls. 100%.
I figured, man.
Oh yeah.
No, I got to ask, but
no, it's cool. It's cool. That movie is the total package. And like you alluded to earlier, you were talking about how the claymation in it, you were looking at something that was practical. It was someone's heart and soul into that work. So you look at some of the effects and you're like, that's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. But it's someone's, heart and soul. And there's so much heart in that movie. They probably filmed it with 6 people doing tens of jobs each. I mean, it's tens of jobs. Wow, that was profound. But yeah, no, seriously, it was a labor of love. Low budget labor of love, and that's worth a skull right there. The acting, who cares? I mean, we're not being critics. You say that, but I mean, you could see the lights on in Bruce Campbell. You could see there's someone home. Everyone else, I didn't really care about. To the same degree. So you're looking at pretty awesome performances and a lot of heart. What else could you ask for in a movie?
Right. And it just like we were talking about, Evil Dead is something that stands up to this day. It just got a remake in 2013, and it's got Evil Dead Rise is coming out next year, I believe, the new sequel. So
I haven't seen either of them, and I think I should. I really should. I'm not like standing on ceremony. I'm not like, oh, I hate remakes, because obviously I've been known to like some remakes. But I'll have to check it out.
Evil Dead 2013 is it's in my top 3 favorite remakes of all time.
That's awesome.
It's bloody, it's gory, it's scary, and it's very intelligent. The reason it's not a bunch of kids going to party at a cabin in the woods. The reason they go to the woods and the reason they have to stay there, not just go there, but stay there, is very intelligent, and it makes a whole lot of sense. It's not just, hey, we're partying and now shit's going on. What are we going to do? They have to stay there for a very specific reason. So I would strongly recommend checking it out, man. I will check that out.
I will do some writing myself. You have my full attention.
Now, I do want to remind everybody, I do have Brandon's social media links all down here in the description. So make sure you're giving him a follow. Great guy. I'm so excited to have worked with him. I hope to work with him again in the future. Brandon, don't go anywhere, man. I got a couple more questions for you. Everybody else, as always, keep talking horror, stay what you are, and we'll see you guys soon.